This too shall pass is a life lesson. As bad as you think it is right now and devastating it might look like it's going to be, it'll pass. It'll be better. As great as this moment is, and it couldn't get any better and it's going to last forever, this will pass. It's all going to change. So if you expect that it's going to stay this way, either very good or very bad, that's your problem. It's the expectation of not changing that's the problem. And once it does change, either for better or for worse, that will pass too.
Dr. Terry Dubrow, welcome to From Vision to Creation. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to talk to you today.
Well, Dr. Dubrow, it truly is an honor to have you. You have built such an incredible career as one of the world's most respected plastic surgeons while teaching millions of people about the ethical and the emotional side of plastic surgery through your work on television. I'm super excited to dive into your journey, your philosophy as a surgeon, and how you turned your vision into this amazing career.
Yeah, it's been a long journey. I hope there's still a lot left to it. I'm enjoying myself. My career keeps evolving, and it'll be interesting to see where I go with it. It's very fun.
Well, let's start all the way at the beginning.
Okay.
What initially drew you to medicine, but plastic surgery in particular?
So I was a good student in high school, but I didn't really have any direction. And I pretty much got all A's. And people said, what are you going to do? What are you going to do in college? I said, I don't know. They said to me, well, you should probably be a dentist. And I said, why? They said, oh, it's a great job. It pays pretty well. And people generally are happy. So I said, okay. So I volunteered for a dentist and I hated it. So somebody said, well, why don't you try the emergency room? So I went to the Yale New Haven emergency room, and the minute I walked into the emergency room and saw the Yale residents and the ER and the vibe, and I even liked the smell. I still like the smell of hospitals, and how bright they were. They seemed so encyclopedic and confident, and what they were doing was so important. I mean, this was life, Every move they made was just like a key decision in someone's life. I thought, this is for me. So I wanted to go to medical school. That was it. And I went to UCLA Medical School, assuming I was going to be a cardiac surgeon. It's funny, you walk into medical school, and based on your personality, they sort of label you right away. Oh, you're a this, you're a that. They took one look at me and my personality. They said, you're a surgeon. I go, really? They go, oh yeah, you're a surgeon. So I said, okay. So I started to do, the rotations, and cardiac surgery was the ultimate because I'm pretty cool under pressure. I can assimilate information, distill it into simple concepts pretty easily. And I thought, what's cooler, what's more important than saving someone's life by fixing their heart disease? And so I was going to be a cardiac surgeon. But in the second year of medical school, every other week they'll have like a new specialty, a professor come in and give a lecture about their specialty. So you're exposed to all the specialties before you make your decision. They had this plastic surgeon walk in. His name was Dr. Malcolm Lesavoy. And he's sort of like 6'3", sort of looked like Mel Gibson, a young Mel Gibson, and wore cowboy boots and was just very cool and casual. He goes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to introduce you to the field of plastic and reconstructive surgery. And he said, turn off the lights. This is back when they used to show slides. And he showed slides, everything from, cancer surgery to cleft lip, cleft palate, cosmetic surgery, burns, microsurgery. And then at the end, he turned on the lights and he goes, ladies and gentlemen, that's plastic surgery. This is the last Renaissance field of medicine. And we all just went, whoa. So he walks out. I chase after him. I go, Dr. Lesavoy. He said, yeah. I said, do you do research? Because I know all professors have a lab and they do research, and that's how they get ahead in the academic world. They publish papers. He goes, come with me. I'm going to my lab right now. I ended up taking over his lab. I did research in his lab for 5 years. I ran his lab at UCLA. And I did a full general surgery training for 7 years. Back in my day, they didn't have these abbreviated plastic surgery programs. You had to do full general surgery, be a chief resident in general surgery before you could even apply to plastic surgery. So I did a full general surgery residency, 7 years. I was chief resident, where you're doing trauma, cardiac, you're doing everything, cancer surgery, abdominal surgery. And then I graduated that, and the next day I became a resident in plastic surgery at UCLA. And here I am. I graduated plastic surgery in like 97. And I thought I would be an academic plastic surgeon, but by the time I was done, I was pretty much done with academics. I published a lot of paper, did a lot of research. So I went into private practice, and I've been in private practice ever since.
I love that story. And there's a huge lesson here, especially for, younger people who are listening, who are just starting out in their careers and deciding what they want to do. It sounds like during this lecture, inspiration struck. Sometimes this happens and people just become interested in a subject. I love that you chased him out of the room.
It's true. That's very me, by the way. If I see something that I'm really interested in, I have to know about it right now. And I think that is a good lesson. I think if you want to do something, just do it. Don't think about it. Don't worry about the ramifications of it. Just go do it. And particularly today, the information access that we have. And, I don't want to get started on AI because I'm obsessed with artificial intelligence. I'm sure you are. But I mean, super intelligence is at our fingertips. Anything you want to know, even medicine, ChatGPT is the most amazing doctor. You can find out anything you want right now. And so the opportunities, I know everyone's afraid, young people are all afraid that every human activity, every job is going to be taken away by artificial intelligence, and it is a concern. But there's so much excitement coming in the future. You have the opportunity to literally do anything you want. So this is the best time to be inspired.
Before you actually got started practicing, did you have an idea of what it was going to be like? And was it different after you actually got started?
Medical training is very specific and very long and very, very all-encompassing and intense. And when you're a general surgery resident, so there's 24 times 7 is 168 hours a week. There's a total of 168 hours in a week. In my day, we would literally be awake and working 148 of those.
Whoa.
Yeah. So you do nothing but you lived in the hospital, you're awake all night, every other night, right? You would do like 48-hour, 50-hour shifts before you sleep for 6 hours and then come back at 4 a.m. and restart it again. So when you're a surgical resident and learning how to do surgery, you pretty much know what being a surgeon is like. I mean, it changes when you get out in the real world, but this whole 10,000 hour concept of Malcolm Gladwell, how do you become master at something? You need to put in 10,000 hours. You do 10,000 hours in your first 2 years of surgery in your residency. So you get a really good idea of what it's like. Being a plastic surgeon in the real world is very different than what being a plastic surgeon is like during your training, however, because there's a whole open world of you got to learn how to talk to people. You got to learn how to get them through this surgery that they're doing for cosmetic reasons mostly, and running of the business, which is you learn zero about running a business when you're learning how to become a doctor. And all the factors that are involved with plastic surgery, it is completely different when you get out there. But the surgical part, becoming a doctor, and you get out the first day I was in practice, I was a pretty decent surgeon by then, but everything else was completely different.
And what do you think was the most difficult hurdle you had to jump in order to start your own practice?
For me, I didn't like the business part of it. I had to get a lease, and I had to hire employees, and I'm very good at focusing on a few individual tasks, but I'm not really good at sort of backing up more macro and sort of juggling, I need furniture in the office, and I need to get insurance for this. I'm much more of a focused kind of surgical mind. So that was very challenging for me. I'm not a very good boss because I let the employees basically do whatever they want. I grew up with a very permissive mother who basically let me and my brother do whatever we wanted to do in life. And because of that, my brother, I don't know if you're aware of this, my older brother became a famous rock star with a #1 album, and I became a doctor. My brother was the lead singer of this band called Quiet Riot in the 80s, and they were the first metal band to have a #1 album. They were on the Billboard charts. They were #1, and Thriller was #2, and Lionel Richie was #3. So my brother was a very famous rock star in the 80s. And that's the only reason we're so different is because my mother let us do anything we wanted. It just so happened we were both psycho-focused people who wanted to do something significant.
I think there really is something super powerful to having a parent that allows you to just explore who it is that you want to be, because then you get to quite literally pursue your interests without feeling like you're disappointing them. Because I know sometimes parents have very specific goals for their kids.
True.
And I encourage everyone, if you feel strongly about something, go after what you want. But I love that. That's really cool. And no, I did not know that about your brother.
Yeah, I mean, I think her permissiveness worked in our situation, but it always depends. If you're unfocused and you're a bit sort of scattered and you're not very good at concentrating on any one particular goal, or you don't have any real significant goals or ambitions, sometimes it is better to have a more, sort of parental figure in your life who's maybe telling you what to do and when to do. We were just super intense guys, my brother and I. And, you wind us up and let us go, and we were going to focus on something. And he literally dropped out of high school in 11th grade to become a rock star. And that is like the worst plan ever. But my mother let him do it. And think about what a normal parent would do if you want to drop out of high school in 11th grade to become a rock star. You would be very upset and do anything you can to keep them in school and know that that's a terrible plan. But because of her, he was able to achieve that goal. And what's interesting, he's the singer. He was the lead singer of the band.
Wow.
And he really didn't have very much singing talent. He literally, by sheer will of nature, forced himself to become a rock and roll singer. So you ever heard the song, "Come On, Feel the Noise, Girls, Rock Your Boys"?
Oh,
We'll
yes.
Get wild, wild, wild. That's my brother.
Wow.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, they still play "Bang Your Head," "Mental Health Will Drive You Mad." They still play that at basketball games and football games. That's my brother singing. So he just said, and it's tough to give people advice, follow your passion, take it all the way, no matter what. That can be, there's two sides to that, because if you're trying to do something that's incredibly difficult to do, it might not be the best advice. It's hard to know.
That's a fair point. And when I graduated from high school, I told my mom that I was going to move to Los Angeles to become an electronic dance music producer.
Okay.
And she said, absolutely not.
Right.
You can do that after college if you want to.
Okay.
So I'm not a DJ, I'm a podcaster after all.
But you're doing well, and you're good at it. I'll tell you a quick story. So my med school roommate had a little brother, and he went to Harvard, very bright guy. And he was in a band, and he wanted to stay with the band. He plays multiple instruments. And he said, I'm either what I'd really like to do is just do this music thing with the band. And we said, why don't you do that after you go to med school? So he goes, I don't want to go to med school. I mean, I kind of do, but not really. I really want to do the band thing. And he's in this band. And we both said to him, the band thing's not going to work out, man. So he quits the band. He goes to medical school. The problem is the band was ultimately became a gigantically famous band
Oh,
that
man.
had he stayed in it, he would have been a member of this gigantically famous band. So in his case, going to med school was a mistake. Staying in school was a mistake.
Which band was it?
It was Santeria.
Got no crystal ball. Yeah.
What's the name of that band?
Sublime.
Sublime.
Yes.
Yeah, he was the saxophonist in Sublime on the first album before they. Yeah,
You just never know.
I know. So maybe it wasn't the greatest advice for him, but he's a very good doctor.
Hey, well, that's not a sad ending either. So
No, true. But he missed the opportunity of being Sublime.
true. Yeah, there is that.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, and one thing that has always fascinated me about plastic surgery is when a patient comes into your office and they tell you that they want something done, whatever it is. I know that oftentimes it is cosmetic.
Yeah.
How can you tell when somebody has body dysmorphia or they're asking for something that they'll never be satisfied?
Yeah, that's a really important skill to develop. And it's interesting, when you're going through your plastic surgery training, no one ever talks about this at all, because you're spending all your time trying to learn how to do the operations, which can be very complex, deal with any complications that may occur, and learn the skill set to become a plastic surgeon. No one ever discusses how do you evaluate whether a plastic surgery patient is doing it for the right reasons or the wrong reasons. And if they do this operation, will it end up being something that you shouldn't have done, they should have done, and it adversely affects their life. You develop this ability to quickly determine or not whether a patient has some element of BDD, body dysmorphia. It's kind of spectrumy. There's, to a certain degree, everybody has a little body dysmorphia, and then there's the, oh my gosh, this tiny little thing on my face is devastating my life. And if I can just fix this tiny little thing that nobody can see but me in the mirror, if I can just fix that, my life will be good. That's full-blown body dysmorphia. And then there's everybody in between. It's unfortunate, like I said, no one teaches you how to do it, but you learn quickly. The problem with plastic surgery is, and I'll tell you how you can tell, but the problem with plastic surgery is plastic surgeons don't really care, by and large. And I'm not really putting down plastic surgeons. Maybe I am a little bit. Plastic surgeons are mostly concerned about filling their operative schedule. We have very expensive offices with big overheads. We want to lead these plastic surgery lifestyles. And most plastic surgeons just want to operate on you, okay? Because that's what we like to do. We love to operate. We like to make money. We want to get better at it because it's a 10,000 hours thing. And they spend very little time evaluating the patient for whether they're actually a good or bad candidate. I've always been a little bit of an empathic type person, and I don't know, I was just naturally concerned people were doing this for the wrong reasons. And so I immediately try to suss out in fact, I will say, like, if a 50-year-old comes to me, a female, for a breast augmentation, I say, let me ask you a question. Why now? Why are you doing this now? And what does it mean to you? I mean, I don't try to get too touchy-feely, but I really want to know, are they trying to fix their life with this operation? Are they going to have unrealistic expectations? Is this going to be a problem? So I ask them, what's going on? Why are you doing it? And then I even bring up complications in the initial visit. How would you react if this went south, if you had a complication? And then the other thing you can do is you assess whether they use words like perfect, terrible. This thing that I want to fix is terrible, and I want it to be perfect, and you're the best. Everything is extreme. Okay, that's a dead giveaway. They're way too concerned about this thing. They expect it to be perfect. They have no concept that there are risks involved and it could go south on them. And you're never going to make them happy. But once you lay your scalpel on them, they own you to a certain degree because you now have violated their tissue spaces, and there's a sort of liability and responsibility emotionally, physically, legally to your relationship now. So you have to be really careful. They say you make your career out of the patients you didn't operate on, not the ones
Wow.
you did operate on.
This is actually a really surprising perspective, especially considering all of the botched surgeries that you see. Why is it that some plastic surgeons do they just not care? Or what do you think the problem is?
I think the problem is it's retail medicine. So I don't mean to put too fine a point on it, but it's medicine for money, And so plastic surgeons are super highly trained, mostly incredibly talented surgeons, but you're in training I did 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, 7 years of general surgery training, and 2 years of full plastic surgery fellowship. So I was 34 before I had a job of any kind. All right. So you're behind the eight ball. Your friends have all sort of done their thing. They're all in whatever they're going to do. They're mostly doing it. And you're in a hurry to catch up and get your career set and get moving. Right. And so you're not focused on those kinds of things. You're focused on getting your surgery schedule filled. The problem is once you start operating on 100% of the patients that come through your office, because 10 to 15% are going to be bad candidates and shouldn't have plastic surgery. And at the very least, you shouldn't operate on them. Now you've operated on someone who's never going to be happy. So they come in post-op and they are unhappy, and they're unhappy immediately. So you want to make them happy, right? So what do? You operate on them again and again and again. And then ultimately, if you operate on them in a short period of time or a lot, you're going to run into a complication. You're going to compromise their tissue. It's not going to heal very well. And then they're going to end up with a significant, potentially disfiguring complication that's incredibly hard to fix. And when it comes to what I do for a living, a specialty in fixing bad plastic surgery, no one comes in your first 10 years of training, 99% of your patients have never had surgery, and they're just like regular, fresh plastic surgery patients. You don't get to do the incredibly high-risk, difficult stuff. You may accumulate experience over the next 30 years, but you're never very good at it because you're good at doing what you do all the time. If you did a podcast once every 4 months, you'd never really acquire great podcasting skills. If you do it every week, aren't you better at this now than you were when you began?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right? No comparison, right? Well, that goes for revisional plastic surgery, which is also very difficult and very high risk. What happened with me is I did a TV show very early on in my career. It's called The Swan. You're a little bit young, but if you look it up, you'll see it was a giant reality show in 2003 and 2004 on Fox after American Idol. So within 4 years of graduating plastic surgery, I was on a national hit television show. I had a gigantic practice overnight, like a doctor who's out for 25 years. So I got massive experience very early on. So I started to accumulate experience. People were coming to me, and I got better and better at doing difficult surgery. And then we pitched this show about fixing bad plastic surgery to NBC Universal and E, and they picked it up. And then we got really good at doing super hard plastic surgery. And that's that sort of life happened to me. Life, I don't know. I mean, I always have this theory that we're living in what do I call it? A simulation anyway. And none of this is real. I don't know. I've always just tried to be the best person. If I'm a nice guy, I live like a Buddhist, and I always am super good to everybody around me, life will kind of take care of me. It's sort of always done that for me. I've been extremely lucky.
Well, I agree that it is a simulation. I mean, we're born, we're here for a very short amount of time. Even if it's 100 years, it's nothing. And then it's over.
It's over. Yeah.
Well, I want to go back to the Swan.
Yes.
Because I think it's interesting that not only did you get a hit reality TV show super early in your career, reality TV wasn't huge in 2003. How did that come about?
There was a show that was big that sort of created plastic surgery reality TV. It was called, I'm sure you've heard of it, Extreme Makeover.
Mm-hmm.
And it went for like 6 seasons, and then it was canceled. And then, so plastic surgery became a thing on reality. This, by the way, this was the beginning of reality TV. Reality TV was really, really salty back then, and, you know, very kind of inappropriate and pushed the envelope. And they were just trying to figure out, you know, what was bad taste, what was good taste. And this person thought of this idea about taking these ugly ducklings. Her name is Nellie Galan, and putting them in a house. Do you know the Swan? Have you ever heard of it?
Yes, I have.
Oh, you do know it. Okay.
Yes.
And so these ugly ducklings, put them in a house together, and then we would do a head-to-toe makeover on them. And, you know, that it was very if you were to go to Google or ChatGPT and have it list the top 10 worst reality shows of all time, I think Swan is almost always one or number 1 or 2.
Oh, wow.
Because of them. If you look at it through the lens of today, we're calling women ugly ducklings and saying they're not good enough unless they have massive makeover plastic surgery. And then just when they've been made over, they have to enter into a competition. And if they lose that against another one of the Swans, if they make less of a transformation, they get dismissed and go home. And if they do make a good transformation relative to whoever they're matched up against that week, they advance to a beauty pageant where they put on swimsuits and display their plastic surgery to see who is the ultimate Swan. You could never do that show today, ever, nor should you. But back then, I mean, it was super controversial. I remember when Dr. Phil said, I want those Swan doctors coming on the show. And we went, uh-oh, do we want to do this? And Fox goes, oh yeah, you're doing it. That's great advertisement. And we showed up to Dr. Phil with the Swans, and we thought he was going to rail us, but it turned out okay. But it was, you know, it was when reality TV was figuring out what's good and what's bad taste. And here we are today. You would never, ever be able to do a show like that today. So.
Well, that's really interesting perspective for your career, because not only are you, you know, a practicing surgeon, you're also have this platform and you get to see how quickly things are changing in culture and media. And I feel like with changes in media also come changes in plastic surgery fads.
Yes.
Is there a particular fad, Dr. Dubrow, that you look back on and you think, man, I can't believe we did that?
Well, I think 3 things. One, giant breast implants. You know, not only do they look funky, but they're actually not good for the body. The immune system doesn't like you to put giant breast implants in a human being because the immune system will reject it and form scar tissue around it. So I'm glad that now people are getting much smaller implants. I think the weirdest thing that we ever did in plastic surgery, which I've always been against, which is the most dangerous procedure in plastic surgery and the most fatal. In fact, it's like the most fatal elective surgery procedure you can do, is called a BBL, which I'm sure you've heard of, Brazilian buttock lift,
Wow.
where you take fat from one part of the body through liposuction and you inject it into the buttock to make the buttock bigger. And then, unfortunately, there's these little veins in the buttock that are directly connected to the main vein feeding back to the heart called the vena cava. And if you inject fat into that main vein, it goes to the lung and it's extremely fatal.
Wow.
So to think that we actually do an operation to make a buttock bigger, which has a significantly high risk of death, is crazy.
I didn't realize it was this dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, there are ways that we do it now that have made it more safe. You're supposed to do it with an ultrasound so that you know, because it's a blinded procedure. You stick it in through the skin. You don't know where the tip of the injector is. So you can sort of see the blood vessels and maybe avoid them. But it used to be 1 in 3,000 would die. And that's higher than in a gallbladder operation.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And think about why you're doing a BBL. I mean, a gallbladder, okay. You're taking the gut, it's disease. Appendectomy, they might die. All right, that's fine if the fatality rate, but to make the butt bigger, you're going to take on that kind of risk of death. It's just insane. And then the other thing I think is crazy that we're got much better at now is there was a period where we were overfilling the face, the pillow face look with fillers, where everybody started to look just overfilled and weird. And I remember there was an article on Time magazine, and it was called The New Face. And it was just people with these homogenized, overfilled faces that pretty much everybody looked the same. That was a bad idea.
And what do you think is the most popular procedure today?
Well, right now, because of Kris Jenner, it's all about the facelift, getting a facelift. Now, and what we're calling the Forever 35 look. You're like, if you're a female now, you're not allowed to age. There's just no laxity that you're allowed to have. I mean, I'm being facetious, but along the jawline or in the neck and an early facelift. And oh my gosh, look how wonderful Kris Jenner looked. Of course, she didn't really look like that. I mean, there was a lot of filters. And Kris Jenner looks amazing. She's gorgeous. The guy did a great facelift on her. But the face that was being portrayed when she came out with that facelift is not a realistic face for a 70-year-old. That is not. 70-year-olds don't look. She looked younger than Kim, if you ask me. I don't know who was doing it. There's a lot of filtering or maybe a swelling or whatever. But that gave a very unrealistic look as to what people could and should look like. Whatever the Kardashians do, I love them. They're wonderful people, actually. They move the needle. Whether it was Kylie at 19 having lip filler done, right? Or Kris having a facelift or whatever they've done to the buttock area. I have no knowledge of that, but you know what I'm saying? So that kind of stuff really, really moves the needle.
And when you see these, like, for example, if Kylie Jenner gets lip filler, how soon after that do you start to see an increase in that in your own office?
Immediately. Next day.
Well, really?
I mean, I remember, so recently somebody asked her on her Instagram or something, hey, your breasts. And, by the way, a lot of people now are admitting to having plastic surgery. That for a long time, nobody would be willing to admit to any plastic surgery procedure. But now they'll admit to it. Some of them. They won't admit to all of it, but it's okay to admit to breast implants. It's not okay to admit to liposuction. It's not okay to admit to BBL unless you're sort of a rapper. Then you might admit to it. People are now admitting to facelifts, but she never, I guess, had admitted to having her breast done. And then she did, and she actually said she regretted it 3 years ago because she thought it was a mistake to do before having kids, which I love that message. But then recently, somebody asked, she goes, I had 350 cc's put in under the muscle by this doctor. Boom. Those Kardashians, they change everything overnight. They have such incredible power, And so to answer your question, that day, they will change things that day. Yeah.
It really does speak to the power of reality TV and how it's transformed over the years. And I do think that shows like The Swan and Botched really did help destigmatize the conversation around plastic surgery, which I actually really love. And for anyone who hasn't seen Botched, which, I mean, there are probably very few who haven't seen it.
Yeah.
People often just associate plastic surgery with cosmetic. And of course, oftentimes it is.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's required to correct a procedure that's gone wrong, or it can be a congenital defect that you're fixing. Watching people's lives transform through your work on the show was amazing.
Thank you.
Is there any particular story that stands out to you?
Yeah, there's many, but there was one. So if you watch sort of the formula of Botched, every week I do a patient, and because I'm a head to toe plastic surgeon, I do a body case. Not always. Sometimes I do a face, but Paul, the other guy on the show, is an ear, nose, and throat facial plastic surgeon. So he doesn't do any body work. So he would get all the faces and I'd get all the bodies, even though I do face work, okay? He would do one, I would do one, and then there'd be some person who wanted something extreme done that we would say no to. That was the formula every week. This patient came in the second season who had had illegal substances injected into her face by some madame at a hotel. And it turned out not to be normal stuff that you would inject, like hyaluronic acid or acceptable other fillers. This person who injected her went to a plumbing supply store and got caulking material, which is basically concrete, liquid concrete. And instead of injecting approved substances, would inject the concrete into people's buttocks and faces. She ultimately went to prison for this. But we had a patient who came in who was a victim of this injector. And what had happened, this concrete injection all over her face, it turned into hard, enlarged masses called granulomas. So she literally had these masses. Her name was Raji.
I remember her.
Yeah. And we knew we were going to pass on her because when you've had an overactive immune system putting down scar tissue around concrete, it's too dangerous to try to take it out because if you go too deep, you're going to cut all the nerves. If you get too superficial, you're going to cut the blood supply to the skin. It's going to die. So everybody turned her down. And look, if 15 surgeons are turning a patient down and you're 16, you're number 16 and you try it, it fails, what's your defense? 15 people before you turned it down for good reason. It's too dangerous. So we turned her down. We said, we'd love to help you. But I thought about it for the entire off season. And we're typically off 3 or 4 months between seasons. And I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I just thought about it constantly because I felt so bad for her. And then I literally woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I had an epiphany. I know how to fix this. I thought to myself, why am I trying to take the whole mass out? I can just take out the central 2/3, leave a little bit of the lower part near the nerves, a little bit of the upper part near the skin. And if I can just take it out so you can't see it, I mean, if you touch your face, it's all bone and concrete and skull. It doesn't feel weird, it's just hard. So if it looks normal, but it's a little hard in spots, that would fix her. So the concern is if you operate on her, it's going to activate the immune system and the immune system is going to put more scar tissue and it's going to get infected and everything's going to be a disaster. So I took her the next season back and I took her to the operating room and took one out and just see how it healed. And it healed. So then I took her back that same season and took them all out. So I took her from a person who literally couldn't go into a grocery store because of these masses. She looked like the Elephant Man. And I took them all out, and he's probably the happiest patient I've ever had, and probably my biggest, I think, most significant success.
My aunt and I used to sit down and binge Botched. We remember this one in particular, and I remember we were both crying at her transformation because it truly was incredible.
Yeah, that was a really good. And then, I've had since then, one of the most gratifying things about Botched is it's forced me to come up with operations based on foundational surgical principles that don't exist to solve impossible to fix problems in unique ways. And so Botched has turned me into like my own textbook of revisional surgery where I've sort of appreciated, I don't want to say learn because learn sounds experimented, but I've learned how to do novel operations using surgical principles to fix difficult problems. And I've become very experienced at doing that. It's kind of my thing now.
And Dr. Dubrow, what has plastic surgery taught you about yourself?
I never really needed to, well, my wife would disagree with this. I never really needed to, I'm about to say, to be humble, to lower my, my ego, to decrease my sort of overconfidence. But plastic surgery and doing revisional surgery has taught me to be very, very humble, meaning respect the tissue, respect the patient, respect the process, be very, very paranoid at all times, constantly think about, like when a police officer, they're trained, they walk up to a car and there's an older lady in there who, it looks very innocent. They still walk up there as if she could pull out a gun and shoot them. That's always front of mind. For me, it's really taught me to always think that any operation I do could turn into a disaster, and to always think about the worst thing that could happen and what can I do to minimize the chance that that worst thing could happen. I think you don't want to go through life paranoid, but you want to always be vigilant and always think, even in situations that seem like a no-brainer, there should always be that you back there going, all right, wait a minute. This seems easy. This seems like a no-brainer. What am I missing? Or what should I be thinking about? Always check that in your own thoughts, whether you're buying a house, whether you're making a career move, whether you're entering into a new relationship or ending a new relationship. Always go, all right, hold on a second. Before I make this decision, think about what could go wrong and what you wish you would have thought about. The you 2 years from now would come into time machine and come back and go, hey man, before you do that, I want to tell you it didn't work. And this is why. Always think about the you in the future giving you advice now.
I really like that, because what you're doing there is you're taking a step back from the situation and almost becoming the observer instead of the active participant. And what that does is it allows you to see things a lot more from a more balanced perspective, and not being caught up in that exact moment and in the emotional aspect of it. Because a house is a great example. You can get really emotional about buying this new house. You love it. It's perfect. But if you don't listen to that small little voice, like, hey, well, what about this other thing? It might come back to bite you later.
It's interesting when you talk to people, at least the people in my life, who have made decisions that didn't work out. More often than not, when you ask them afterwards, they go, I kind of suspected that there was going to be a problem, and I just didn't want to look at it closely. And had I really put it under the microscope for a few minutes, I probably would have gone a different direction.
How can people differentiate between a higher self intuitive thought versus just plain anxiety?
That's a tough one. I think the best way is that you add time to it. So if everybody's going to have, always going to have a sort of acute anxiety related to some thing you have to do, whether it's an important decision you have to make or a novel experience that you find yourself in. But I always say, my father always used to tell me, that's great. Before you do that, why don't you get 2 nights sleep? Because, you'll go to sleep. The next day you wake up, you're still thinking about it, still in the back of your mind. Do your thing, go to sleep again, wake up, boom, 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 now. And if you add a little time component, elongate the decision-making process, you've at least put it through that filter that probably will. It's not guaranteed, obviously. You're still going to make decisions that you'll regret, but the chances that you'll make a better decision than you would have made if the time was shortened is elevated.
Well, because you're dampening impulsivity.
Right.
And I've never heard it phrased that way. I've heard the expression sleep on it.
Yeah.
But I've never really thought about it in a practical sense, how placing time between yourself and the decision you're about to make, how that can really allow you to just really evaluate things and sit with it. Because, yeah, that's interesting. I've never thought of that.
Yeah, I think one of the places it really rings true is that email you want to send back. That is a really emotional, anxiety-laden, decisive, when you really think about it, email in response to some emotionally charged situation, whether it's to your boss or your spouse or your partner or whatever. Maybe don't send that email. You want to, but just send it tomorrow. Send that email tomorrow. And you might find that tomorrow you go, yeah, no. I don't think I'm going to send that email. Or if you do send the email, it's going to be a vastly different email than you would have sent in the moment.
Right.
Even little decisions like that, adding time to it can allow you to make better decisions.
And what do you think has been the biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
This too shall pass is a life lesson. As bad as you think it is right now and devastating it might look like it's going to be, it'll pass. It'll be better. As great as this moment is, and it couldn't get any better and it's going to last forever, this will pass. It's all going to change. So if you expect that it's going to stay this way, either very good or very bad, that's your problem.
Wow.
It's the expectation of not changing that's the problem. And once it does change, either for better or for worse, that will pass too. So take the good with the bad. It's going to get better. It's going to get worse. It's not going to be great forever. If you're doing really well, maybe that's the time to squirrel something away for when it's not going to be so good. Or if it's not good, I promise you it's going to get better. So dampen all of the extremes of emotion because it all changes. This too shall pass, the good and the bad.
Do you think that your disposition is what allows you to be a good surgeon? Because this is really good advice. I think that a lot of people operate in extremes. And I feel like if you're neurotic in that way, a high stress job like being a surgeon probably wouldn't be the best one for you.
As a surgeon, you operate under the emotional umbrella of whatever's going on with you at that period of time. For example, let's say you do a breast augmentation and the patient has a horrible bleed afterwards. And you have to, in the middle of the night, take them back to you have to take them to the hospital and you have to transfuse them they had a real disaster complication. Tomorrow, when you're in the operating room, you are paranoid and you are self-doubting, you're inhibited, you're self-conscious, and you're not flowing, you're not letting it go, and you're not necessarily the surgeon that you could or should be. Try not to get too caught up. It's easier said than done. But if you're too neurotic and too paranoid, that's also not very good. And one of the challenges I've had is that as the botched surgeon and as a guy, I have a pretty significant career as a certified expert for the California Medical Board. So I see all the doctors conduct F-ups. I have a big medical legal career where I'm an expert in court all the time. I have a career fixing people's bad plastic surgery. So to me, all I see is the bad stuff. So every operation I'm doing, it reminds me, I did a thigh lift the other day, which is an operation that has a lot of complications that goes with it. And the next day I'm testifying in court about a thigh lift that went very badly. So and I'm studying this case very carefully so that I know what I'm going to testify to and I know the records. I'm making the decision going, oh my gosh, this operation goes really bad sometimes. I was extremely paranoid throughout the entire operation rather than plastic surgery in general. Surgeons love operating. You may think it may sound super high stress and intense. It's not. The music's playing. Nobody can call in there. The anesthesiologist is in good mood. The nurses are in a good mood. It's very light and airy. It's really fun. It's like doing your little art. You love it. Nothing is more enjoyable for a surgeon than being in the operating. You're on your own little cocoon, your own little world. Nobody is bothering you. You have 3 hours of heaven, right? It's wonderful. But if you're in there thinking about this testimony you're going to give about a disaster that happened, it really affects the way you're going, oh my gosh, what if, there's a big blood vessel down there. Yeah, you know it. But you've operated on that 10,000. Oh my God, what if I go a little too deep with my scalpel and you know what I mean? You've got to really try to compartmentalize your thinking.
Yeah.
That's a really important thing to do. Compartmentalize your thinking and do something with that anxiety.
Oh, that's great advice. doing something with the anxiety, because it's true. If it's in you, you're going to have to attach it somewhere until you've worked it out. How can you transfer the anxiety, do you think?
I think you put it, everybody has their own way of working their own brain and their own body. You got to work on yourself and find out what works for you. What I do is I do a lot of visualization. So I have a process now. When I scrub into the operating room, I go, okay, I'm about to go into my little safe haven where no matter what's going on in my life, that doesn't count now. Nobody can get at me. Nobody can bug me. I have no other problem because I'm about to go in my little heaven world, my little bubble of the surgery, of the operating room, right? Because no one wants to stress out the surgeon. So as I'm scrubbing, or as you're about to do whatever it is that you're doing in your life, visualize. Go wherever I do a lot of sort of looking up, going, I'm doing the operation. So let's say you've got something really stressful in the background and you need to get something done here. Well, before you go in and do it in your brain over and over. See it, do it, see it, do it, live it. I do the operation 5 times in my brain before I've actually done it. So as I'm visualizing, it's really hard to deep breathe and visualize and take in the anxiety. It's really hard. It's actively very difficult to actually do it. In other words, it's good. And then I'm a very silly guy. And I'm constantly joking. Nothing is that serious to me. And I have found, and this is what I do with my patients, the moment they walk in the day of surgery, I have like my 5 stupid jokes that have been tried and true over the years. And I know they're anxious, and I know they're about to undergo general anesthesia, and I'm going to cut them open and do high-risk surgery on them. They're really freaked. So I go in and I try to make them laugh, because laughter is sort of the water to the fire of anxiety. It's really hard to be anxious when you're laughing.
Yeah.
They don't go together. So I try to crack my patients up all the way into surgery right before they go under. I get really silly. I have my same stupid, I walk and I go, are you nervous? And they go, yeah, I'm really nervous. I go, yeah, me too. Okay, everyone laughs to that. That's a good one. So now they've laughed a little bit. So some of the anxiety, I'm whittling away at this mountain of anxiety. And then I have, afterwards, you're going to come in, we're going to change your dressing. So I need to ask you, what do you want? Thousand Island or blue cheese? Okay, that's super stupid. But all right, they pretty much laugh at that too. And then I tell them, and if they're really nervous, I tell them some story about, a lot of them are housewife fans. My wife is a real housewife in Orange County. I'll tell them that and they go, oh, distraction, humor, those things. It's really hard to be anxious when you're visualizing, distracted, focused, and laughing. So that's what I use as my antidotes to those things.
Dr. Dubrow, where's the best place that people can keep up with your work and find you?
So, I have a podcast with my wife and I called Between Us on iHeart. You can always see me on E! Doing Botched. I moved my practice from Newport Beach to Beverly Hills, so I'm a Beverly Hills plastic surgeon now on Roxbury. I actually live in Beverly Hills now. And I have an Instagram account. I don't post that much. I post a little bit because I'm not really a selfie guy, but I get sick of myself somewhere. I guess my phone is going to show me, isn't that? Because your phone's listening to you. But I do. One thing nice about this stage of my career, and I think it's a good thing to try to do in your career, is it's wonderful to have a main career, but it's really fun to have many different, not just hobbies. I'm not really a hobby guy. I like to have many different components of my career. So it's good if you're a carpenter to also be that maybe has nothing to do with that field of endeavor. It's good. I always wanted to have, my goal when I met my wife was to have multiple streams of income, because I didn't want to have to depend, because I spent some time living in a house that my stepfather was a plumber, and he was always out of work. always. And I thought, because this too shall pass, my theory of life, and everything is going to change. If you do one thing and it changes and you're not doing anything else, that can be quite stressful. So get interested in doing lots of things potentially that can bring in wealth and income and at least focus you away from just the one thing that you do, because the one thing you do may change tomorrow. And I can tell you, you were maybe a little young you remember 2007, 2008 global financial crisis? Were you a sentient being then?
Yes.
You were? Remember how devastating? I don't know. That was a big change. And of course, we all remember, at least a lot of people now, how it went from 2019 COVID to 2020. Who would have ever thought that all of a sudden you're not leaving your house or you're leaving with them? I mean, things like that can and do and will happen. So don't expect them not to happen. And if you're diversified in your career and your interests, you'll be in a good place.
Yeah, and that's great advice. And I'm going to include the links to your social media profiles, your podcast, and everything in the episode notes below. So anybody who wants to check it out can easily do that.
Thank you.
And if you could go back in time and offer your younger self one bit of advice specifically tailored to you and your life's trajectory, maybe back to the moment right before you chased the plastic surgeon out of the auditorium, what would you tell yourself?
Your instincts are good. I would say your tendency to become hyper-focused in something that you want to achieve without thinking about whether it's a good idea or not is a good tendency. So go with it. Go with your instincts and do your thing. That's what I would tell myself. It's funny. People ask me if you could go back like that and fix things, do things differently. I've been very fortunate. I grew up in an era where CNBC was a thing. In my era, my parents' era and my wife's parents' era, nobody talked about money. It was like déclassé to talk about what do you do with your money? How do you make more money? How do you solidify your future? But I grew up in an era where CNBC became a thing. We talked about stocks and real estate and mortgage and buy, borrow, die, and all these financial concepts. Talk about things, learn, be a student of yourself. It's important to understand and be a student of yourself, learn yourself and learn how to work this world. And you're all so lucky because you have, I call it the democratization of intelligence. You have super intelligence in your phone. The smartest, you have Einstein at your fingertips in every field. So everyone is so lucky to have the advice of the smartest human beings on earth, because that's what's in ChatGPT and Claude and everything. So use the force, Luke. Use it all to your advantage. I guess the only other thing I would say is, I guess you probably say this all. Don't be afraid to fail. The fear of failure is probably the most significant thing that can hold you back. Fear of looking bad, the fear of embarrassing yourself, the fear of not having it work out, having another thing that failed. The best part of failure is that it's another statistical shot at success, right? And you talk to all the billionaires and all the super successful people, they've had so many fails, but it's those failures that you learn more out of than the actual success. It's the mistake. If you're lucky, your first few things won't be successful because you think, oh, I've got hubris. I've figured it out right away. Everything I do works. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. So fail your way to success. It's really important. Don't be afraid.
Well, Dr. Dubrow, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This was so much fun. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Your questions were very insightful and very fun. So thank you.